Hi, can you all hear me? Wow.
We can hear you.
Okay,
Go
okay,
on.
great. All right, great. Okay, thank you everyone for responding to our invitation. So we all know the reason why we are here concerning the recent SAMOA agreement that Nigerian officials just signed without the consent of Nigerians. So we are here to discuss what SAMOA agreement is, the implications of SAMOA agreement, and then the way out. What do we do as Nigerian youth? What do we do to help ourselves and help our beloved country? Do we just sit back and relax and watch our country dying? Or we can come together as young people, to create a conducive Nigeria that we want. A Nigeria we want for our generation and generation to come. So here in our midst is our main speaker, in person of Barrister A.R. Kaketo, an international human rights expert, also a member of the Governing Council of African Bar Association. He is an advocate of the Court of Judicature in Uganda and Kenya. And we will have him in this session to explain to us what we need to know about Samoa Agreement and the way forward. Thank you so much. Barrister Kaketo, you are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share. We've started quite late, so we'll try and keep it brief. Okay, so we are reflecting on this SCP-EU agreement, which now has the name the Samoa Agreement. It is the agreement, a partnership agreement between the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states on one hand, and the European Union on the other. Now, it started off as the Lome Convention in 1975. It was an economic partnership agreement between the former colonial masters and the former colonized states. That's why we call them the African states, the Caribbean states, and the Pacific states. After 20 years of operationalization, we then got the Cotonou Agreement. Now, these two were both trade agreements. Every after 20 years, they expire and then we renew. Now, the post-Cotonou Agreement, which is now called the Samoa Agreement, that some of us refer to as the devious EU Treaty, was signed on April 15th, 2021. Initialed, not signed, initialed. Initialing means that the chief negotiators put their hands off the document on April 15th, 2021. But the document was delayed by complaints within the European Union itself, especially Hungary and Poland, because the European Union must all first agree before it would then move out to come and sign with each individual African, Caribbean, and Pacific state. Now, last year, November 15th, 2023, the document was signed by 44 SCP states. Okay, now we have 79 SCP states, but 44 of them signed in November 15th, 2023, and Nigeria did not sign, just as Uganda at that time. Uganda subsequently signed after some pressure was exerted on it, and Nigeria is the most recent. I think, yes, the most recent because Maldives signed a little earlier. So Nigeria has also signed. It signed on June 28th, 2024. The real question is, why is Nigeria signing at this point in time? Have the circumstances that kept it from signing changed? Those are the kind of questions that any young person would consider addressing their mind to. Okay. Okay. So let's get started. Uh-oh. when I made Yusuf the host, I lost the sharing capacity. So I need to reclaim. I need to reclaim host. Yusuf, you need to make me host again so that I'm able to share.
Okay then. All right.
I wanted to make you host so that you can let in people as they come, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Just return. Okay.
I did that.
I'll keep admitting as they come. All right. All right. So the first thing I want to point out is the SCP-EU agreement or the SAMOA agreement is trying to make sexual and reproductive health and rights become international law. Mainly because SRHR does not appear within the core documents of international law. When we examine the core instruments of international law, we do not have anything that refers to SRHR. As you can see, that is the list of the international human rights instruments. When you search them for the word sexual and reproductive, you will find so many zeros. It is only the Convention on the Rights of the Child that mentions the word sexual 5 times, but purposely with regard to sexual abuse. So children are to be protected from sexual abuse. So it is understandable why the Convention on the Rights of the Child would make that many references. We then have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, which mentions sexual once and reproductive twice. And it is all connected to sexual and reproductive health of persons with disabilities. Otherwise, on the whole, out of 9 core international human rights instruments, sexual and reproductive health is mentioned only once. Okay, so we can comfortably say that within the hard norms, the concrete international human rights law that has existed hitherto, we do not have reference to sexual and reproductive health and rights. But it is the case that the current forceful prominence of these sexual and reproductive rights has been gained through a manipulation of the soft norms of international human rights law, the human rights mechanisms, and the known asymmetry in the international relations system. By asymmetry, we usually mean the inequality that exists within nation states, those in the north and those in the south, those in the west and those in the east. Okay, so that is the basis of our contention that a trade agreement has been reviewed and renewed to contain language that has hitherto not been part of the trade agreement. So we now have the SAMOA agreement with provisions that are going to be making SRHR international law. It has been part of softer documents, agency communications from UN, or a few conferences here and there, but never in negotiated international law documents. Now, this agreement, the Samoa Agreement, is going to be making sexual rights law, is going to be making reproductive rights international law. What we have here is a layout of the list of countries. From Sub-Saharan Africa, you have 48 plus 16 plus 15. That gives you 79 countries. I think it is now 78 because South Africa withdrew. Okay. Now, if you have these 79 countries and you add the 27 European Union countries, you will have up to 106. No, it will be 105 because South Africa isn't there. 105 countries out of 194 in the United Nations. All of them members of this Samoa Agreement. And the result will be, as we will see later, this agreement requires that they vote collectively in the international system. So this is a power grab by the EU to make sure that the African states that have been in the habit of forming their own bloc and protecting their own sovereignty and values within the international system will now be compelled to vote along with the European Union. As you can see, those countries underlined right there, most of them are members of the Organization of Islamic States, of which Nigeria is a known partner. Okay, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has quite a number of African countries as members. And those members, most of them have signed. We were hanging on to Nigeria. So what then does it mean for Nigeria to sign? By Nigeria signing, it is joining the countries that have disregarded the concerns that we have always had. The EU itself, before the signing, had this on their website. They said some SCP states may be reluctant for the foundation agreement to mention reproductive health and sexual orientation, notably LGBTQI rights, an issue which there are differences also among EU states. So it was known from the very beginning, before the agreement was signed, that a number of countries were concerned about its content. When this agreement was signed, it became binding on all the parties under international law, but it will be fully operational after Nigeria ratifies. Unfortunately, however, the way the European Union operates, this term you see here, provisional application, is all they need. By the signing of the agreement that Nigeria did on 28th June, don't be surprised if you have EU advisors posted in the Ministry of Women Affairs, posted in the Ministry of Youth, posted in the Ministry of Education, posted in the Ministry of Health. Because for the European Union, all that matters is the signature, not the ratification. Now, the SAMOA agreement, as we indicated, is more than a trade agreement. It has an entire section on human rights, democracy, and governance. Human and social development. It is working on global alliances and international cooperation. A very long agreement, but it establishes a structure that confers too much authority on the Joint Council of Ministers. The old agreements, meaning the Lome Agreement and the Cotonou Agreement, had a consultative entity called the SCPE Joint Parliamentary Assembly. This was the people's representatives holding the Council of Ministers to account and the Bureau to account. Now it turns out that the consultative body, which is the parliamentary body, the Joint Parliamentary Assembly, has been fizzled out and reduced to one representative per region. I think Africa has at most 5 speakers or deputy speakers or heads of delegation that have been identified. But then we have this Council of Ministers who make decisions, and that decisions are binding on the entire membership. And the task of the ministers under Article 884 is to coordinate cooperation and adopting joint positions within international organizations and fora. Now, good people, I have to point out, the rest of Africa has been counting on Nigeria at the UN to protect the sovereignty and values of Africa. When a nation pops up, it is usually Nigeria that mobilizes other countries. They sit together, agree on an African position, and Nigeria presents. Now, what Nigeria has just done by signing this SCP is to surrender its leadership in that capacity for the EU whipping, in the sense that it now has to vote along with with the European Union. So parties are to strive to adopt joint resolutions, declarations, and statements to coordinate positions where appropriate, voting, and to take joint actions. So the European Union and the African states that have signed will have to be voting together within the UN system. The result is a number of the things that have been holding out there as African positions are going to fizzle out. So many references to human rights in a trade agreement. And the human rights here we are dealing with are those interpreted on European Union terms. Nigeria shall support universal access to sexual and reproductive health commodities and health services, including for family planning, information and education, and the integration of reproductive health into national strategies and programs. Good people, we are shortly going to see that the idea of sexual and reproductive health commodities is not innocent. It is not innocent. If I may ask you guys on the call, what would universal access to sexual and reproductive health commodities mean? The phrase universal means everyone, including your siblings, your daughters, your children, etc. Okay, who are still minors or underage, they would also have this universal access, thanks to comprehensive sexuality education, again, that this treaty promotes. Under Article 36(2), again, Nigeria will commit to the full and effective implementation of the Beijing and the ICPD and the outcomes of their reviews, and commit to sexual and reproductive health and rights in this context. Now, friends, the Beijing Declaration was negotiated. It was affirmative of the natural family and affirmative and protective of the preborn person. The same applies to ICPD, the International Conference on Population and Development in 1994. It was a negotiated platform of action. A number of countries had their voices heard, including those who had reservations, the Holy See, Iran, Bahrain, etc. These negotiated documents made it clear that abortion shall not be used as one of the means of family planning. These negotiated documents acknowledge the family as the basic unit of society that shall enjoy protection of the state. However, the outcome reviews of these conferences have always been pursuing a contrary agenda. Outcome reviews means ICPD 25 plus 5 years, 94 plus 5, so that would be 99, and then probably another 10 years, and then maybe you are at 2000. So in Kenya, in 2019, we hosted what was called the ICPD 25, meaning 25 years after ICPD. And you know what? It was sponsored by UNFPA and the Danish government. A number of participants showed up, but those were considered pro-family, considered pro-life, considered pro-religious freedom, were denied access to that event. They had to do their own side event outside the premises. What am I saying? I'm saying that yes. Hello? You hear me?
Yes, sir. We are with you.
Okay. So I was saying the outcome reviews of Beijing and ICPD are where the devil lies. They are usually champions-only gatherings. In Nigeria, they will not invite people who are pro-life and pro-family. They will not invite people interested in protecting Nigeria's values. They will invite the CBOs that have been making money from IPPF. They will invite all the youth groups and women groups that have been receiving funding from all these pro-abortion and anti-family groups. They are the ones who will assemble in the review spaces. And then they will only review the documents in a manner that is consistent with their ideological base. So when we say Nigeria has committed to the full and effective implementation of Beijing ICPD and their outcome of reviews, you know that Nigeria is committing to more than just the trade agreement. Now, the European Parliament has told us what it thinks sexual and reproductive health and rights are. It includes legal abortion care services. It includes comprehensive sexuality education. It includes enjoyment of SRHR for LGBTQ persons. So sexual rights for LGBTQ persons would be what? Sexual and reproductive health commodities for LGBTQ persons would be what? Is it hormones? Is it in vitro fertilization? Is it surrogacy? What are these rights? And when we say there should be universal access to these rights, are we saying that for me who does not believe in transgenderism will pay my taxes and my taxes will be subjected to subsidizing the lifestyle of a transgender person? These are the questions that young people ought to be asking themselves. Okay. So Article 2, the party shall systematically promote and ensure that gender equality is mainstreamed across all policies. Okay. Now the term gender, friends, is no longer an innocent term. We have over 110 genders so far. So the term gender is no longer innocent. When you hear the term gender equality, today you have to be careful. It no longer means male and female. Now, you're aware that recently when some activists in Nigeria made noise about whether or not Nigeria had signed an LGBTQ agreement, government, in fact, is even threatening to reprimand those who wrote that information. Government is denying that there is no LGBTQ. True, you cannot find the letters LGBTQ in this treaty, but it has a lot of direct provisions which, when deployed, they actually imply LGBTQ. And government cannot deny that it signed onto an agreement that opens the door for the LGBTQ liberties. So apart from adopting joint resolutions, I give you the last slide here. Africa Regional Protocol. Now, the way the SCP-EU agreement is crafted, the SAMOA agreement, it has a general agreement, and then an African protocol, a Caribbean protocol, and a Pacific protocol. Now, again, the African protocol is asking Nigeria to commit to the full and effective implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action and the Program of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and their outcome of reviews. They shall, meaning the parties, meaning Nigeria, shall further stress the need for universal access to quality and affordable comprehensive sexual education. Taking into consideration the UNESCO International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. UNESCO Technical Guidance. Okay? I have to take you straight to the UNESCO Technical Guidance. Here we go. Okay, where's my UNESCO slide? Okay. Okay. Now, the UNESCO technical guidelines are really problematic. We have children as young as 8, 9 being taught about masturbation. We have children of age 10 to 15 being taught that sexual orientation is okay, and men and women can obtain sexual pleasure from fellow women or fellow men. Part of the content of comprehensive sexual education. So when Nigeria commits to follow the UNESCO guidelines on comprehensive sexual education, Nigeria is definitely saying they will follow the standards that UNESCO is providing with regard to sexuality education. I want to leave that content there because the challenge has been that prove to us, show us that these provisions exist in the treaty. I've done that. Next issue that we must think about is what next for Nigeria? Various options. The young people in Nigeria, civil society organizations, people of faith, of goodwill, from all denominations, Muslim, Christian, etc., should put pressure on their legislators, write formal letters to your legislators. A single communication from the Muslim leadership is not enough. A single communication from the Catholic leadership is not enough. A single communication from the Pentecostal leadership is not enough. we need each MP pressured from back home. Pressure to do what? Pressure to demand that Nigeria files an amendment to the SCP-EU agreement. Now that they are signatories, they are members. They can file an amendment under Article 92 and Article 99 of the SAMOA agreement. And that amendment can be categorical, that nothing in this agreement shall be read to mean obligations relating to comprehensive sexuality education, abortion, LGBTQ, sexual orientation, and gender identity. When that amendment is pushed, be sure the European Union will reject the amendment. And when the European Union rejects the amendment, it will then become clear that the European Union always wanted that agenda be part of what is implemented. The next option for Nigeria would then be considering unsigning or withdrawing. And it's not the first time Nigeria will not be the first country to have done that. South Africa did it in 2023. It was not to commit. Okay, Namibia has done it, formally writing and indicating we will not sign. Maldives has written, signing and saying we understand the paragraph to mean protection of the family, protection of the preborn persons, based on their faith. Most of the Maldives people are Muslim. They've insisted on an interpretation of the treaty on their terms. Now, when you read the communication that came from the Minister of Information and National Orientation, they said that when the signing took place, a declaration accompanied the signing expressing what we agree with and what we don't agree with. He has not made that available. We've looked for it. I've searched everywhere. I can't find that declaration. I hope it exists, because if it doesn't, then the Minister of Information and National Orientation could have lied. Okay. Those are the two possibilities for Nigeria. Okay. If Nigeria succeeds in pushing an amendment, then other countries will follow. Many countries signed uncomfortably. So it should be possible that if Nigeria pushes the amendment, other countries will also follow. I want to leave it at that and then take any questions if you have. Thank you. Yusuf?
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful presentation. We sincerely appreciate your effort, your time, and everything. So we want to give time for questions and answers. Please, if you have a question, you can ask your question, so it will be attended to. Any question?
Yeah, this stuff tends to be legal heavy. So I'm not surprised that maybe the best way to handle it is to establish if people have been following what is going on. Have they read the newspaper articles? Have they heard what the ministry has been saying?
Yes, we've been discussing this on the general with all the information and the matter at hand. So, well, I expected to have had some questions from the audience. So,
Hello, good evening all.
All right, good evening.
So about the agreement, we understand that the government is trying to deny the facts that they have signed. So if we are proposing to want to be open and say something about it, how?
Arif, Elakwa.
Hello?
Yeah, you can go on. Go on.
Yes. So right now, are we going to be talking about the fact that they have signed the LGBT, or for the fact that we are going to point out that they have signed something they don't understand? Or do they really understand and they are just pretending not to? So that's what I have
Yeah,
to ask.
the trust online paper, I think it is called Trust. Been around for close to 26 years.
Daily Trust, yeah, Daily Trust.
Yes, the Daily Trust shook government when it revealed that government had signed an LGBTQ agreement. You see, usually in communication, you can choose to point out the absurd so that you demonstrate how how weird a certain situation is. Now, the Daily Trust must have had access to the information that relates to SRHR, meaning, just as the Europeans have met, SRHR means LGBTQ rights, means sexuality education, means abortion, means all this stuff. Okay? So if the agreement does not have the letters LGBTQ, but has SRHR, which SRHR includes LGBTQ and SOGI, don't you think that the Daily Trust was justified in saying what it said? In fact, their legal secretary has made quite an argument. He said, we will readily apologize if we turn out to be wrong, meaning if what we reported is not the case. So, of course, they mentioned 150 billion. They mentioned LGBTQ, and government is hanging on that string to say you lied. But actually, it is government that is lying right now when it doesn't acknowledge that by signing on to the full implementation of sexual and reproductive health and rights, it is signing on to the implementation of LGBTQ rights. So when someone asks you, when you get into such a discussion, you ask that person if they know what sexual and reproductive health and rights are. Okay. Example, you would say, do sexual and reproductive health and rights include abortion? Do sexual and reproductive health and rights include comprehensive sexuality education? Do sexual and reproductive health and rights include transgender rights? Anyone who answers no to any of those questions is either ignorant or a liar. Chances are the answer to anyone who is honest to that, all those questions will be yes, yes, yes. And if all those things exist in SRHR, then the Daily Trust cannot be blamed for having said that government signed on to an LGBTQ agreement. Dela, is that clear?
Yes, well said. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response, sir. Any other question, please?
It doesn't have to be question. It could be a comment. It could be a suggestion for action. Okay. So yes,
Okay.
I will encourage us. I'll send you a copy of the agreement. Yusuf, or you already have it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, share the copy of the agreement to everyone, and let people read for themselves the articles you pointed out. Then the next thing, apart from that awareness, people really need to exercise their civic rights. People should not be intimidated. You go to the domestic office, the constituency office of your MP. Each of these members of parliament or each of these representatives in the House of Representatives has an office back at home in the constituency. That's where you deliver the letter. And you're asking your MP to go to parliament and call the Minister of Foreign Affairs to account and demand that an amendment is filed that excludes all these perverse statements from the agreement, well knowing that European Union will reject it. And when European Union rejects it, then Nigeria will have no option but to consider withdrawing.
Wow.
Nigeria
Thank you so much.
does not need the SAMOA agreement. It is European Union that needs Nigeria. I wish our people could understand that. It is the European Union that needs Nigeria. Nigeria does not need the European Union.
Exactly. They are only using a deceitful language, to just deceive Nigerians. So I think Barrister Kaketo, I think you were there during the negotiation of this agreement, and you people asked for a literal interpretation. That is to say, under no circumstances will any of these articles of the agreement promote LGBTQ rights, abortion, and teen sexual abuse, but they have not provided such interpretation. So that is to tell you that these guys are just deceiving people, They have their language they always use to manipulate Africans. So it is high time we just wake up. We, the young people, we don't have to just sit back and relax and be watching what's happening. So it's high time we wake up and, engage ourselves, honestly. So engaging our members of parliament from our various states is very necessary, and that will be our next step. That will be our next step. And also, we are currently working on an online campaign petition directly to the Nigerian officials. We'll share it online, and people will sign in the petitions and let them see what is up. Let them see what we are feeling. Let them know that we are not okay with this decision. So I hope that God will help us. No, we truly need to do something. We need to do something.
Yeah. So the principle is amend all and sign. There's some hands there. I don't know.
Okay.
Deji, someone called Deji.
All right. Okay. Sorry, I'm in a public place. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about the noise. Okay. So I put in the comment section about lawsuits if it's an option, then referendum if that could be another option. Because then mobilizing, especially different religious bodies, since they have the number. I think that's a channel to use, since they have the number to mobilize it. Since they have the number to mobilize their followers, to push for, then different pressure groups So for what is could that be an option? And if we decide to, sorry about the noise, like I said, if we decide to use all these options, both referendum, pressure groups, will it work? And lawsuit, I mean, yeah, plus lawsuits too. Thank you.
Yeah, a suit would be interesting. In fact, I think government was threatening to sue, is it Barrister Sony or someone? And I was telling people that, that would be a real opportunity, because when we get to the courtroom, we will definitely challenge court to pronounce itself on whether or not SRHR includes LGBTQ. And in that sense, government would be called to order that actually by signing SRHR, it signed on to LGBTQ, even though we already have a law against it. The referendum, I don't know what the nature of the question would be. Should we be asking? Maybe actually it will be a good one, but we're asking people probably whether or not to keep SRHR in our books or remove it. So that would be very good. It will be a period of awareness, educating people on what SRHR means, then asking them to exercise that democratic. When people decide that we should scrape SRHR, then we will have to go to all the policy documents and all the laws and expand that phrase, SRHR. Yeah. So yes, everything is possible. Some of what it can be done is short term, the other is medium term, the other is long term. Short term right now, it has to be members of parliament have called the minister to order. They will not call him to order if the people they represent don't put pressure on them. I have heard tomorrow there's likely to be a petition on the floor of parliament on this same issue. I hope people will be following on the national broadcaster that streams proceedings in the House of Parliament, representatives. It is good that the MPs who sponsor this and second it are supported, and an eye is kept on MPs who are likely to sweet talk the Samoa agreement. The religious leaders already know, but the Muslim community is aware, the Catholic community is aware, the Pentecostal fellowship is aware. By being aware, I mean their representations in Abuja have been briefed. They are all well briefed now. Okay. Yusuf, we are on the top of the hour. We need to be closing.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kaketo. Thank you for your sacrifice. It is something you are truly passionate about, and God will reward you for all your sacrifice and everything. We thank you for this privilege. It's a privilege, and we are not taking it for granted. We are going to, get ourselves together and do the needful. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. I'll wish you a good night to all.
All right. Good night.